We've talked a bit about the idea of extraterrestrials. We've talked a little bit about interdimensionals. Another one that comes in that is somewhat related to interdimensional, depending on how you think about it, is that some of these beings may actually be us from the future. So there's this term that a friend of mine, Dr. Mikael Masters, coined called extratempestrials. So the beyond part is the tempestrial in terms of time. So outside of our time. And when I actually started looking in this direction, not only did I find colloquial evidence kind of thing, when you start realizing that they look humanoid so often, right? Sometimes they look fully human. So why would that be the case if they're space aliens? It doesn't fit with our Darwinian assumptions about life. Um, but then even in conversations and reading the books that Mike has written, Mike Masters, which I would totally recommend people read, primarily his book, The Extratempestrial Model, which is the second book, really lays it out. Again, this touches on what I was saying earlier. He assumed just by his own choice, his own free will, he went through a certain line of experiences in life and then ended up choosing to get a PhD in biological anthropology. In retrospect, he realizes that he was kind of led all along the way. And when he was a young boy, I think maybe 8 or 9 or 10, he saw his dad's copy of Whitley Strieber, I mentioned earlier, his book Communion. And this was a turning point in our cultural zeitgeist because when many people saw the front cover of Communion, they thought this being looked strangely familiar. And it made people feel a bit unsettled. Like, why does that being look familiar? And it's sort of buried in our subconscious, which again speaks to the fact that this might be much more widespread, the contact, than we're aware. And again, because this spreads in all directions, maybe even points to awareness prior to this lifetime, even, right? So this comes into it as well. Um, but basically, he said, not that looks like an alien. He said that being, whatever it is, must be related to us. And so then he went on and at one point made a change into his degree program and became a world-renowned expert. And he has been able to make the case that there's all sorts of genetic markers, biological markers, suggesting that they are somehow related to us. That chimpanzee to modern human to what we call a gray alien seems like one consistent trajectory. And that if you take a modern human being and the evolutionary trajectory we're on currently, and you add 8, 10,000 years, depending on different environmental factors, you would quite likely end up with something like a gray alien. So it's not just that their features are somewhat similar to ours, but if you follow the trajectory out for what we're already trending towards, you will end up with something like a gray alien. And on top of that, I have numerous experiencer friends who've been through the abductions and have been told that, right? One person on social media that recently came out and identified as a abduction experiencer from the 90s said one time he sat down and got the courage up to ask the being, "Are you guys aliens?" And the being said, "Sort of. I can understand how you would think that, but we're actually you from the future. We live on a different planet now, but we're somehow from your relative future." And this also ties into what I was saying earlier about the fact that everything seems to be ramping up together in some sort of spiral towards some sort of climactic moment. This is also what these beings that identify as being us from the future are saying is that humanity is about to pass through some major threshold, and that different factions of these future humans, or neo-humans as I call them, that we identify as gray aliens, some are here to help prevent a certain eventuality from happening, while another group is actually trying to maybe see that it happens because perhaps that's what that eventuality leads to them coming into existence. So I know that we've already gone in many different directions here, but this time piece seems central. And I've had briefings from people in intelligence circles who have said, both in terms of American intelligence, British intelligence, that this is understood, that some of these beings, not all of them, but some of these beings are us from the future, and they're here in preparation for some major turning point event that we're quickly approaching, which when we look at the way our world is kind of spiraling up into some sort of something, it seems like that could be quite possible. And even the beings that are asked, are you aliens or are you us from the future? And they say some sort of combination of the two, but they will also say, but there are many other kinds of species visiting you that are just fully extraterrestrial. And some that are extra dimensional, right? So one of the notions that's coming out of our understanding of reality, I'm talking about even mainstream physics, is beginning to understand, not in a way that's like really fringe. I'm talking about Nima Arkani Hamed. Some of these really world-class physicists are saying space-time is an illusion. Space-time is a derivative, like a shadow on the wall of some deeper structure of reality. And so these beings might be arising from that deeper structure. They may have an understanding of that deeper structure that we're just barely beginning to be aware of, even. And because they're working from that deeper structure, which gives rise to space-time, it allows them to sometimes edit space-time, I would argue, and not just as one total, but for each individual person, they can custom craft and edit their experience of space-time, which is why you can sometimes, again, Valle's recounted experiences where people will be driving in a car. I think it was in France, down a busy road, and they all see something above through the sky roof of the car. And nobody else on the road seems to be acknowledging there's anything going on. And then, number one, they are able to video something, but it looks like a multi-pointed star. It looks nothing like what they actually saw in real time. And on top of that, they each saw something slightly different, and everybody else didn't see anything at all. So this speaks to the complexity of this. And like I said, it inevitably leads you to questions around the nature of reality.